To the member for Bennelong.
To make a statement not exceeding 5 minutes.
Is leave granted?
Leave is granted.
Thank you. Member for Bennelong.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. This isn't the first time I've risen in this parliament to speak about the opposition's divisive language when it comes to migrant communities. For many migrant communities, unfortunately, being impacted by the language of the Liberals isn't a new experience. They've been using migrants as political footballs for decades, and you think by now that they would have learned to stop. In a country where 30% of our population was born overseas, and a country where almost half of the population has a parent born overseas, just like mine, this sort of rhetoric from the Liberals is divisive, nasty, and it hurts Australian families. In 2016, the Minister for Immigration and Border Protection, now Leader of the Opposition, was suggesting that migrants, and I quote, won't be numerate or literate in their own language, let alone English. In 2018, he was saying that migration should be cut and that we shouldn't be letting migrants in who are going to be a burden. And in 2023, it goes on, Deputy Speaker. They continue to use migrant communities to score cheap political points. In this place, a matter of months ago, they did it on infrastructure, saying that we should stop renewable energy projects because solar panels and inverters are being made in China. Again, using the Chinese-Australian community in their ideological opposition to taking action on climate change. And now they're doing it on housing. Deputy Speaker, I first want to say that I acknowledge that the housing crisis is real and people are hurting. They want governments to do more, and this government will. But we are not in a housing crisis because of migrants. We are in a housing crisis which we've been in for decades. Do I need to remind those opposite that rents rose and housing prices rose when our international borders were slammed shut during the pandemic? CoreLogic's head of research shows that rents rose 16.5% during the pandemic, and in 2021 we saw housing prices rise by 23.7%. Those things happened when migration was next to zero. Earlier this week, founder of an online rental reporting agency, Geordie van der Berg, summed it up perfectly when he said, and I quote, "Migrants to Australia are not the cause of our housing crisis. Successive government failures are." And, Deputy Speaker, the response to his statement of fact is the byproduct of what happens when leaders use migrants as political footballs. The replies to Geordie's tweet were filled with racist, anti-immigrant sentiment, especially towards the Islamic, Asian and Southeast Asian communities. This is the impact of the rhetoric that the opposition continues to use. When the Leader of the Opposition and his party use migrants to score cheap political points, their language hurts communities like the one I represent. Words matter, language matters, and in this instance, facts matter. There is a human toll to the political tactics of the Liberal Party. Their words hurt communities that make our country great, and their words enable hate speech online and in our suburbs. So through you, Mr Speaker, to the Leader of the Opposition and to the Liberal Party, I'd like to say migrants are not the cause of housing and rental crisis in Australia. Lazy governments are the cause. And let me tell you how proud I am to be part of a federal government that, for the first time in nearly a decade, cares about the housing crisis and is doing something about it. Every street in my electorate of Bennelong has benefited from the contributions of migrants. 66% of my electorate have one or both parents born overseas, and as I take my kids to school, grab a coffee in my local shops, I see and hear the positive impact that migrant communities have made to our country. Both my parents were born overseas and moved to Australia. I went to a school in Western Sydney where all of my friends were from migrant backgrounds: Polish, Chinese, Korean, Indian, Sri Lankan, all moved here to Australia. In my entire life, Mr Speaker, I've not met a migrant family that has made this country worse. Every migrant I've met loves this country and loves being here. Every migrant I've met works hard and wants to grow our economy. So to the Liberal Party I say, be better. Stop using migrant communities to score your cheap political points. Take ownership and be part of the solution.